Welcome to Last Stand Stories, where ordinary people face extraordinary odds, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death.
The Atlantic Ocean has a way of making people feel small. From the deck of a tiny sailboat, the endless blue seems peaceful, almost inviting. But beneath that calm surface lies one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. In the winter of 1982, a 30-year-old American sailor named Steven Callahan set out alone to cross the Atlantic Ocean. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't trying to break a world record. He simply wanted to sail across one of the world's greatest oceans in a boat he trusted with his life. Months of planning had led to this moment. His yacht, Napoleon Solo, was just over 21 feet long, a small vessel built for solo voyages. Every piece of equipment had been carefully inspected. Food, fresh water, navigation tools, emergency supplies, everything seemed ready. The weather was favorable. The sea was calm. And for days, the journey unfolded almost exactly as planned. Far from land, surrounded by nothing but water and sky, Steven settled into the quiet rhythm of life at sea. Sunrise, navigation, small repairs, simple meals, long hours alone with his thoughts. It was the kind of solitude he had always loved. But the Atlantic has one rule. It never promises tomorrow. Just after midnight, Steven was jolted awake by a deafening bang. The impact was so powerful that his entire boat shuddered beneath him. At first, he couldn't understand what had happened. Had he struck something? Had another vessel collided with him? Or had a whale rammed the hull? He would never know for certain. What he did know was far more terrifying. Cold seawater was pouring into the cabin at an alarming rate. His yacht was sinking. There was no time to panic, no one to call for help, no rescue ship on the horizon. Steven moved on instinct. He grabbed his emergency supplies, activated his emergency beacon, and fought to launch the small inflatable life raft before his sailboat disappeared beneath the waves. Within minutes, Napoleon Solo, the boat he had built, trusted, and called home, slipped beneath the Atlantic. Everything he owned vanished with it. Now, Steven floated alone in a tiny life raft, surrounded by thousands of miles of open ocean. No land, no certainty, only the vast Atlantic, and a fight for survival that would last an unimaginable 76 days. Dawn broke over the Atlantic. The storm was gone. Steven was still alive. But survival had become a race against time. His world had shrunk to a small, inflatable life raft, barely large enough to stretch his legs. Around him was nothing but an endless horizon in every direction. The emergency supplies he had managed to save were painfully limited. A few food rations, a small amount of fresh water, some basic survival gear. It wasn't enough to last long. He knew the numbers. A person can survive only a few days without water. Rescue had to come quickly. Every few minutes, Steven scanned the horizon, hoping to see the silhouette of a passing ship. But hour after hour, there was nothing. The Atlantic had swallowed him without leaving a trace. Then, one afternoon, a massive cargo ship appeared on the horizon. It was the opportunity he had been praying for. Steven fired every signal he had. But what happened next? The ship kept moving. Steven watched it grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared beyond the horizon. His rescue had vanished before his eyes. For the first time since his boat sank, hopelessness began to creep in. But giving up wasn't an option. If no one was coming to save him, he would have to save himself. Every day became a carefully planned routine. He repaired small leaks in the life raft before they became deadly. He collected rainwater whenever dark clouds appeared. When the skies stayed clear, every drop of fresh water became precious. Food was another challenge. Using simple fishing gear, Steven learned to catch mahi-mahi and other fish beneath the raft. Some days he ate, some days he didn't. The blazing sun scorched his skin during the day. At night, cold winds and crashing waves made sleep almost impossible. Saltwater sores covered much of his body. Every movement became painful. Yet somehow, he kept going. Weeks turned into more than a month. Steven had drifted hundreds of miles across the Atlantic. He had survived storms, hunger, thirst, and crushing loneliness. But the ocean still had one more test waiting for him. One night, violent waves slammed into the tiny raft with terrifying force. And Steven realized his last shelter. Steven discovered fresh damage to his life raft. Tiny punctures were allowing air to escape. They looked insignificant. But in the middle of the Atlantic, even the smallest leak could become a death sentence. Several times a day, he patched the raft with repair kits, desperately trying to keep it afloat. It became a constant battle. Patch. Wait. Check for leaks. Patch again. His body was growing weaker. He had lost a dangerous amount of weight. His hands were covered in cuts. His skin was burned by the relentless sun and raw from weeks of saltwater exposure. Still, his determination refused to break. By now, Steven had spent more than 2 months alone at sea. He had drifted over 1,000 miles, carried wherever the ocean currents decided. Then, something changed. The color of the water looked different. He began spotting more birds overhead. Floating seaweed drifted past the raft. These were small signs, but they meant one thing. Land could finally be nearby. Hope returned. Yet hope can be dangerous, because the ocean has a cruel way of raising your spirits just before testing them one last time. After 76 days, Steven could barely recognize the man he had become. His body was exhausted. His strength was fading. But his will to survive was still alive. Then, one morning, he noticed something unusual on the horizon. Small fishing boats. At first, he wasn't sure if they were real or another cruel illusion. With the little energy he had left, Steven waved his arms and used every signal he could. This time, someone saw him. The fisherman changed course and headed straight toward the tiny life raft. After 76 days alone in the Atlantic Ocean, Steven Callahan was finally rescued.
He had drifted roughly 1,800 miles across the ocean, surviving on rainwater, fish, and sheer determination. He had lost a significant amount of body weight, but against all odds, he was alive. Many experts believed survival for that long in such conditions was nearly impossible. Yet Steven proved that knowledge, preparation, and an unbreakable mindset can keep hope alive, even in the most desperate situation.
His incredible journey later inspired countless sailors and survival experts, and his experience became one of the best documented stories of ocean survival in modern history. The Atlantic had taken his boat. It had tested every limit of his body and mind, but it never took away his determination. Sometimes, the greatest battle isn't against the ocean. It's against the voice inside you that says, "Give up." Steven Callahan refused to listen. And that's why his story is remembered more than 4 decades later. Not because he was lucky, but because he never stopped fighting.
If you enjoyed this true survival story, subscribe to Last Stand Stories, because the next story could be even more incredible. One mountain, one impossible fall, one final chance to survive. Next, the incredible survival of Joe Simpson. See you in the next documentary.